As stunning as it is to see a former president of the United States on trial facing felony charges, it was also pretty stunning when the president was asked about the hush money payments to aboard Air Force One back in 2018.
President, did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels?
No.
Why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth to your allegation?
Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's an attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael Cohen.
Do you know where he got the money to make that payment?
I don't know. No.
Well, he did not know about the payment to the porn star, he said, and he did not know where Michael Cohen got the money to pay her. Both were lies. Now, the question is, were the records of his reimbursements to Cohen for said payoffs falsified, and was it on his orders? Today, the prosecution began trying to answer those questions. CNN's John Berman just got the trial transcript for more detail and about what was actually said in court. So what more did the bookkeeper, longtime Trump Organization employee, say in her testimony about how Trump signed the checks?
Well, he did sign them, which is important, I think. And this is from Deb Tarasoff, as you said, the accountant there. This first exchange you don't have because we just got it in. But the attorney, Chris Conway, asked, who could sign the checks for the DJT account in 2016 or 2017? Answer, you were talking about Mr. Trump's personal account? Yes. Only Mr. Trump, she said. Was that true back in 2016 and 2017? She answers, yes. If you know, the attorney asks, is that still true today? Deb Tarasoff says, yes, it is. Question, that was any check. It didn't matter the amount. She answers, it didn't matter. Now, that was for signing the checks. Then, in about a minute later, they started asking, did he have to sign a check? If he was sent a check to sign because Alan Weisselberg signed off on an invoice, did he have to sign it? The question, did Mr. Trump have to sign a check because Mr. Weisselberg approved it? Deb Tarasoff says, no. If he didn't want to sign it, he didn't sign it. Question, did you ever see situations where he didn't sign checks? Her answer, yes. What would happen in those situations, they asked. Answer, he would write void on it and send it back. Question, how do you know he would write void on it? She answers, it was signed in a Sharpie in black. That is what he usually does.
This is great testimony for the prosecution in a couple reasons. First of all, it's visceral. You can see even just the detail about the Sharpie, right? We all know he uses the Sharpie.
Loves the Sharpie.
Yeah, exactly. He loves the Sharpie, circles hurricanes and stuff. But you can remember that. It's a lasting image. The other thing is he has the ability and the resources to say no. He is involved enough that some checks he says, not signing this, not legitimate, void, yet he's signing these checks to Michael Cohen. Now, the defense will come back on that, but this puts the defense on its heels. This is a really important point in favor of the prosecution.
Because essentially they're saying that he didn't just do whatever Alan Weisselberg handed over or whatever checks he sent to the White House, which is when he signed these checks to Michael Cohen. And that was the testimony also from the Trump controller, the organization controller, who told this story about how Trump tried to fire him when he first started his job. He went in and Trump was on the phone and said, you're fired. And then Trump hung up and said, okay, you're not actually fired, but you need to start paying closer attention to the bottom line here and making me financially whole. And that just because a bill is due doesn't mean you pay that bill in full of what they're asking, that you negotiate it down. So Trump was even saying he was paying that close attention to what these numbers were, which I think the prosecution was doing to say Donald Trump paid attention to where his money was going.
And of course, I mean, when you're talking about what the Michael Cohen payment really ended up being, which was not just the $130,000, but over and above that by
420
by 3 times, basically. The idea that Donald Trump would then say, the same man who says, you got to negotiate down my bills before I pay it, would then say, oh, I don't care that I'm paying him, $420,000, which is way more than he was owed. That is the part that I think is going to be hard for any reasonable person to believe. That's a common sense thing that I think the prosecution put on the table today with that testimony.
You can see the defense, though, coming into focus here. What they're going to argue, and they started doing it today on the cross-exam, is Michael Cohen was essentially embezzling, essentially ripping off his own company. Because he sees, okay, he lays out $130,000. He ends up getting paid back $420,000. Now, is Donald Trump the kind of person who's going to say, this is what the defense will argue, okay, Michael Cohen, you laid out $130,000 for me. Great, here's $130,000 and 0 cents back. Or is Donald Trump the kind of person who's going to knowingly say, this is great, Michael, thank you for doing this. I'm going to pay you back triple. The defense is going to go, they want to say he's a penny pincher. You're darn right he's a penny pincher. He wouldn't have paid $420,000 unless he was defrauded essentially by Michael Cohen. One more point. This is the same moment in time when Michael Cohen has now pled guilty to ripping off his own bank and to ripping off the IRS for his personal finances. So they're going to argue he was ripping off everyone in sight at this point. Donald Trump was essentially
is
duped
so
by
int-
him.
I mean, that's actually not how I would have interpreted those same set of facts, and I think it's reasonable. But I also think it's reasonable for the prosecution to basically argue the idea that Donald Trump is going to be ripped off by Michael Cohen as if he is just a passive player in all of this. That too, I think, is difficult to believe.
Was there something in the transcript that stood out to you, John, about the way the Trump Organization actually operated?
Yeah, chaotically, very chaotically. And this came out in the defense. Emile Bove asking the controller, Jeffrey McConney, question. Now, I think you said before January 2017 was a period of flux and chaos at the Trump Organization. McConney says, that's putting it mildly. Bove says, and that's because President Trump had become president of the United States, right? McConney says, yes, sir. Bove, and the way of doing business in the company had to change, right? McConney, drastically. Bove says, and there was a period where things were in flux because you were trying to figure out how to do that, right? McConney says, yes, sir. And for the first time in decades, President Trump's main office was in Washington, D.C., hundreds of miles away. McConney says, yes, sir. So he was not in New York as much as he had been previously to sign personal checks. McConney says, I don't remember seeing him in New York at all. And Anderson, there's one other thing I want to point out that was all over the testimony today, and it's a person. It's Alan Weisselberg. Played a huge role in this testimony today. And this is just one exchange, and we have a corresponding document to show you. Matthew Colangelo, the prosecutor who was asking the questions today for part of it, says, Mr. McConney, I'm now showing you a document that's been marked People's 35. Do you recognize this document? McConney says, yes. Colangelo says, what is it? McConney says, this is the bank statement that Alan gave me to put in the files. Colangelo says, is there handwriting on this document? McConney says, there are two sets of handwriting at the bottom of the document. Do you recognize the handwriting? I recognize the handwriting on the left side of the page, but not the right side of the page. Whose handwriting is on the left side of the page? McConney says, that belongs to Alan Weisselberg. Colangelo asks, how do you recognize his handwriting? McConney says, I've read his handwriting for about 35 years.
But that document is so important. That document is the most important document in the whole case.
Okay, but so is this question and answer on cross-examination.
Well, maybe we should look at the document.
No, but okay, it's so important. Okay, it's so important. It's very. I'm not denying it's not important. And he talks about McConney talks about all the things he did to create that business record. And here's the question: President Trump did not ask you to do any of these things you described. Answer: he did not.
Jeff, why is that document so important?
Can we call it up? Sorry to put people on. Yeah, there it is. Look, Alan Weisselberg on the left is doing the calculations of how Cohen got paid. The $130,000 plus the $130,000 to cover his taxes, and then a $60,000 bonus. This corroborates Cohen's version of how the whole transaction went down. So it's not like Michael Cohen made up this whole thing.
No, but Jeff, as you said earlier in this show, you said that that's not going to be the issue. The issue is knowledge. The issue is President Trump did not ask you to do anything you described. He did not.
That document doesn't prove that. I agree with you, but you don't have to prove the whole case with a single document. That case proves a very significant part of the case, which is that this was not a legal.
Not testifying.
See, Alan.
No, he's in jail.
Yeah.
He's at Rikers Island with Trump.
And if Donald Trump gets acquitted, the fact that Alan Weisselberg has pleaded guilty, gone to prison, and stayed off the witness stand here is an incredible gift to Donald Trump. I mean, this is the definition of a stand-up guy. I don't think it's admirable since he's a criminal, but I mean, it is an amazing gift that Alan Weisselberg has given Donald Trump.
Just to reemphasize what Jeffrey Toobin just said, the Trump team didn't want this document to be able to be used as evidence at this trial, and speaks to, I think, their level of concern about how the jury will read it.
I think my question always with Trump and with his intent is it comes down to, does Trump have to say, please falsify these documents in order to pay, Michael Cohen, or is there another way to substantiate?
Well, he's got to have knowledge. He's got to have knowledge
because
of it.
I mean, he may not.
You know how they're going to substantiate it? Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen's going to take the stand and say he told me to do it. And as they said, if I'm the prosecutor, I'm not saying you can't get a conviction with Michael Cohen, but I'm going to say a novena before he takes the stand.